Hello, Brian.
Hi.
I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much for asking me on.
Um, oh my goodness, of course. Like, why wouldn't I? I'm gonna start, I think, today. I always like to start with descriptors, describing myself, my identities, also describing myself physically, and doing a little land acknowledgement, if that's okay with
100%. I love
you.
it.
I
Christine,
don't know, where are you located
wait, can I have you,
today?
Christine, I'm going to, sorry, I'm going to stop us for a second for a technical reason. By any chance,
Sure.
do you have a headphones of any kind that you could plug into whatever you're using?
I have my
You ever,
AirPods
you know
in.
what? AirPods are not as good as not having AirPods in. It's better to not even have them in because the
Okay. All
Bluetooth,
right.
because
Then I
I'm
will
hearing the
take them
Bluetooth.
out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got it. All right. So should I put regular headphones in?
If you have
I
them
can
handy and
grab
it's, if
some.
you have them handy, but if you don't, we would just do it without the
Yeah.
AirPods.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me just
Okay.
grab them.
And I'm so sorry to interrupt you because you're doing such a great job, and I want to kick myself for having to interrupt you just now, just so you know.
That's okay. Don't worry.
All right.
You can let while I'm grabbing the headphones. If you want to look up your landing now, where are you?
Oh, yeah, I've looked it up before, and I will look it up right now. Hold on.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Cool. Let's see if these work.
Let's see. I've got two possible areas I'm in. Uh-oh, you disappeared. I cannot hear you. I think your Bluetooth is still on your little guys. That's why I think I'm not hearing you yet.
All right. Here we go.
Okay.
These are the wrong ones, and I
Okay.
don't want to waste time.
That's right. That's fine. This is good. This is totally great. It's actually okay.
Cool. All right.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Take do
The Due. Yes.
All right.
All right.
So,
So I'll pass the mic to you. Here you go. Boom.
hi, Brian.
Hi.
Thank you for joining me today. I'm so excited to talk to you. So excited to talk to you. So, for those of you who don't know, my name is Christine Bruno, and I like to start all my discussions with just a little descriptor, a little introduction of who I am, a physical description of who I am, an access check, and a land acknowledgement.
I love it.
So I will start that, and then Brian, bounce it over to you. So my name is Christine Bruno, and I am a petite, cisgendered white woman. I have cerebral palsy. I sometimes use a mobility scooter. I have short brown curly hair. Today I'm wearing glasses, and I have on a bright pink top, and I'm sitting in front of a massive orange wall. It's like a burnt orange wall, which is my self-taping wall. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I have no access needs today, except I have a great conversation with Brian, and I am inhabiting right now. I'm in Manhattan, and I am an uninvited guest on the land of the Lenape tribe.
Great. Oh, I'm so lucky to be here. Thank you for that beautiful acknowledgement there. I'm going to see if I can do as well. So I am a cisgendered gay man, identify as gay, and I am he, him, his. I am 5'9 3/4", which I usually say 5'10", and then everyone says, "Why are you saying that?" Well, because 5'9 3/4" sounds like such a dork, but 5'9 3/4" is much closer to 5'10" than 5'9". Anyway, and I have prematurely graying hair, I like to say, and I'm wearing a denim shirt with a bunch of enamel pins on it and a Jimmy Fallon T-shirt underneath. And I'm in my living room in Pasadena, California, which is on the Kizh Nation land. I'm an uninvited guest here, which is in California at this point. So,
Fabulous.
thank you.
And I'm 4'10.5", but I rounded up to 4'11" for the same.
Great. You say the half, it all of a sudden sounds like you're like trying too hard, but actually you're just trying to be accurate.
Accurate.
Yes.
But, you know, I'm in good company with the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So, you know, petite and strong. That's how we roll, right?
Yes.
So, so I think today I just, you know, want to ask you some questions, Brian.
Great.
About who is Brian? Who is Brian Patacca? And I'm pronouncing that correct, right?
You are saying it correctly. You know, that's an argument that happens all the time for people. Is it Patacca? Is it Patacca? And, you know, if we were in Italy, it would be Patacca. But if you make you talk that way in the United States, I sound a bit like I'm trying very hard if I do that. Right. So Patacca is totally fine. So who is Brian Patacca? You know, I had an argument in my head when you asked that question, which is, do I want to talk through my action states or my being states? That's where I went right away. Am I what I do or how I be? Right. And I think both of those ways of both of those paths are so important for us. Who we are being and what we are doing are both such a big part of our lives. Right. And so in my beinghood, I'll answer first. I strive to be someone who is generous and kind and patient. And that is both in my relationships with my friends and my clients and my family. And I'm an eternal optimist. I will say, almost sometimes to my detriment. I can see the silver lining in every single experience in any. So sometimes it gets in the way of my critical thinking. And so that's where I have to be mindful. And I am super energetic, extrovert, love to be around people. And then in my actions, I think that my actions carry through that being state, which is I know that right now I can say, you know, we're recording this in the pandemic, and I will say that I know for a fact the saving grace of this time for me has been to put my focus on the audiences that I serve. Like, that's what I think about when I get in the shower. That's what I think about when I'm reading. How can I share this with the people that I talk to? So having a focus which isn't on not being able to see my mother in Ohio, not having a focus on when will be the next time we see each other. It's unsafe for her to travel. And I'm not saying that doesn't deserve my care or my attention, but it is what gets me through the day is the focus on the focus on how do I show up for my mom during this time? How do I show up for my audience during this time? So I think that it defines a lot of who I am, I think is my desire to show up that way. Long-winded answer there. I hope I got to somewhere for you, Christine.
That's a fabulous answer. That's I couldn't imagine a more fabulous answer, especially in this time of the pandemic, which I assume will not be over by the time that this podcast airs. So, right. I mean, you know, life lessons for everybody, right? So how do you feel like if you feel like these practices shifted or changed during the pandemic? Is there any one that's sort of outweighing the other out of necessity or, you know, function?
Yeah, I love this question because I don't think I've actually thought of it in that way. And it is so true. It's so true that yes, of course it is adjusted, right? So by this time of the year, I would have probably already been to Ohio, been to New York City, been to see friends there, been to see my friends in Miami, would have traveled and seen people. And we are I don't know what to call it, a strictly sticking to the rules pandemic family, my partner and I. So, and you know, travel, we're just beginning to talk about what would it look like for me to visit my mom because a lot of time is passing. And so when you ask the question around practices, what comes to mind is there are those of us who are stuck at home alone and people who are stuck with someone. Stuck they're not the right word, with, I would say, right? And that relationship is, you know, easy at times. And sometimes you're like, I just want to be freaking alone, or I'm not being the best person I can be. So you always have a mirror being held up against yourself of who are you being, right? And I will say that in terms of practices, I have had to be more disciplined than I have in the past. It's very easy to wake up, roll out of bed, take a shower, grab coffee, sit in front of my desk and work, and have work become where all my attention goes all day. And it be the only place it goes almost, right? Because no one else is saying, hey, Brian, you want to go have lunch? No one else is saying, my partner's working in the back of the house and at his desk all day, right? So no one's saying, hey, we should let's run to this person's birthday party, right? And so what I'm even finding is I'm missing the lack of excitement or enthusiasm that comes from something that's in the future. Not even that's right now, like, oh, that person's birthday is next week, or that person's whatever I'm going to go see that person in 2 months. Like you have there's that lack of, the thing to look forward to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is a little, the thing to look forward to is a little different. Like, for example, I'll just share this Friday, it happens to be my partner's birthday, and he's not a party person. So he was like, not a big deal. However, we have a pod of like 4 people that we're all tested at the same times and all that stuff. And so we're actually going to have people at our house in a pod. And it feels literally like, are we outlaws and are we going to go to jail? Even though we know we're like pod people, we all get tested on the same week, the whole thing, right? And it's going to feel like, I don't know, the Last Supper or the Thanksgiving dinner. It's just going to feel like a little bit crazy. Like we're with people. And I'm just so looking forward to like being with 4 other people at the same time. And so something around the pandemic, I think for me, is just waking up that piece of humanity in all of us, right? That ability to say, how important connection is for us, right? And I think that's another long-winded answer there, but I guess the answer to this is I've had to become more disciplined if I want to not sit in front of my computer all day, if I not want to work all day, right? Yeah, it feels like an indulgence of like, I'm going to read a book for an hour. Like, I can't tell you the last time I've done that. I remember one day I took a nap for 20 minutes and I was like, who am I? Am I like what? Like, it was very like threw off my identification with the world. So yeah, I think that's where I'm at.
That's great. I mean, that's sort of, I kind of don't need to ask this question, but I'm going to ask it. It was what I was thinking of is, because of the pandemic, have your priorities changed at all? But I think you kind of answered it, but I just wanted to put it out there in case there was something I missed.
You know, there's a priority that I'm really trying to work on right now, which is not there, which is I am a very active person. And it is hard for me to motivate physical activity, particularly like going to the gym or working out, when I'm by myself. I really love doing that with other people. And I was a big CrossFitter for a long time. And it just being next to someone else, not to compete with them, but to feel that we're doing something together, was a whole dynamic that working out. And what I found, I've done a few workouts online, is on Zoom, like no one's talking because we're all just trying so hard to hear the instructor, which is already hard to do over Zoom. So we're not going to like be like, oh, how's it, like, or smile at each other. Like, it just doesn't happen. And so that piece of community that happens in working out is really like missing for me. And so I'm struggling to find it, but I took a class last week where that was a little bit of that going on. So I'm going to see if I can keep going that way. I'm just not a by myself motivator to work out. It's not exciting to me.
I'm the same way. And I think maybe, I don't know, for me, I feel like it comes from being innately a theater person. And like really feeding off of the connection and the energy that you get from being in the same room with people, you know, sort of going toward a shared common goal. So I guess, given your last answer and tying that to what it is you do, how has and how has the relationship changed with your clients having to do everything online in these times? Because I'm assuming that a lot of, you know, pre-pandemic, these were coffee dates or, you know, when you would meet with clients.
Such a good question. And I'm excited to answer this question for a few reasons. So my clients are both one-on-one and in group programs, and most group programs are online. So that was already online with a big part of my business, but I did have some one-on-one clients that I would meet in person. And the big change, I'm going to go a different direction. I think I'm going to answer the question anyway, but you tell me if I don't get there. But what I'm noticing is I'm being called to show up not just as a tell me how to do this kind of coach right now, which is not the only coach I want to be anyway. Certainly I know how to do that part, but I want to be the hold space coach as well. And how do we move through this moment? And so a lot more conversations around who are we being, not just what we're doing. And if there is a gift at all we can see in this pandemic, which is not good. I want to not say like, I think it's a great thing, but if we're going to see a gift in it, the eternal optimist, like I said before, if we're going to see a lesson in it, it is who are we being, who are we becoming, or who are we becoming when that thing isn't there, that drive, whether you identify that as productivity or capitalism or whatever you identify that as, is keeping us moving. When it changes in this way where you have to slow down in some way, I think that's such a beautiful opportunity. And so for me, so the change there is with my clients is helping to navigate that in a way that doesn't say, why don't you just give up for a few months or a year until this is all over again? Like maybe that's the answer, which is so not where I would go at all, because I think that's just going to be a miserable year and not what the universe wants for you anyway. And so that's the big change that I'm seeing in my work, is just showing up for clients in a different way that is most helpful to them. Yeah.
And Bill, bouncing off of what you just said about, rather than sort of like putting your life, your world, your work on pause for a year and waiting for everything to return to normal, because look, we have to admit that it's not ever going to go back to what it was, and B, it shouldn't. So how is there a way in which you're sort of putting forward that message of like, how can we not reinvent or redefine, but sort of reimagine our approach to whatever it is important to us?
Yeah, when you ask that question, it's, you know, excuse me, where I first went was like, how will we ride on escalators and go down hallways? Like, I first went to like physicalize, like how will it physically manifest, which is not what I do in my work, but that's where my mind went at first. And so what I think about when I'm speaking to my clients, and I think this is the same way I speak to myself, is so there's this thing I think that happens when we believe that we have to have the answers to we have to have all the answers. Like this is I'll use an actor for an example, right? Because you're an actor, so that'll work out well, right? So I have to have this manager or this agent or must be on this TV show, or that casting director must meet me, where we're deciding what our abundance should look like. Mm-hmm. And I think it's one of the ways that we bind the hands of the universe, because then we're not open to other things. And so as we describe this, and as you asked, you like, how am I holding the space of, we are not going to go back to the way things looked before, because we actually shouldn't, right? How am I holding the space for that while also helping people move with this moment, helping myself move through the moment? And what I find myself doing is, this is a practice in holding that spiritual attitudinal musculature in openness. And I can't have all the answers here. And so it just feels like a more, I don't know, like the orange juice concentrate version of being able to not have to have the answer. So I have to really open myself up to, wow, I'm not going to go for a walk through the mall in Ohio with my mom when we go home. Like what is that? What's the new thing going to be that we do together if we're not doing that? Who knows? But that is that we have to be so open to. I think it just asks for a willingness to continually exist differently, because I think, we're at this point, we're like 6 months ish in, right? We're a little bit more, I think, actually. So at a certain point I think we're letting go of an idea of, it's going to be that when it goes back to normal, it's going to go back to, right? We have to start to let go of that, or we're just going to be, I think that's like depression makes you think of, they say depression lives in the past and anxiety lives in the future. It's just going to keep you depressed. And I'll say, I'm totally depressed around like the stuff with my body. I wish I was being more active. That's the place where I go, if I'm going to look at the wheel of life of where I need to put energy right now, or discipline or practice, it is using my body. It's just the place I'm neglecting. Right. So that's, I think that is an opportunity again, I think.
That's great.
Right.
So I want to shift gears a little. It's not actually shifting gears that much, but I've got a couple of questions that I don't know if they're fun questions, but they're they're kind of cocktail conversation questions that are deep.
Great.
That have always stay with me.
Okay.
And always interesting conversations come out of these questions. And there are 3 of them, and they're all similar. They're all of a piece. So you might want to answer them individually, or you might want to answer them collectively. It doesn't matter. I'm
scared, but excited.
You probably heard some of these before. So would you say that you are going under the assumption that there are three types of people in the world?
Okay.
Would you say that you are, and everybody, let me just preface this by saying that everybody has all three of these things, but mostly everyone is one over the other two, or more balanced. So I'm just curious which one you think you are. Are you a person who wants to be loved? Are you a person who wants to be wanted? Or are you a person who needs to be needed?
I think I'm a wanted. I think I'm a wanted. And you know where I knew that it wasn't needed. And when I thought about it, the love part, I was like, there's a part of me that feels strongly enough, not like in my love for myself, but it somehow made me think of like being raised well. Like there's a self-esteem around love, and that wanted is a different, like I just think of like flipping on the Zoom camera and being in a program, for example, with some clients. And I say, I just really want them to want to be here, which is a little bit different than focus on me, but I do want them to spend the hour enjoying themselves as they're learning or being coached or whatever. So I think that kind of ties together for me. All right. That was a long cocktail answer. I'm trying to keep it like
Oh,
I'm
that's
just stirring
great.
the ice over here.
Oh, those are great. No, those are great. This one's more of a comment, but you might have, it's sort of something that I live by, which is strange, but I find myself coming back to it again and again and again as an answer for why things happen the way they do and why relationships ebb and flow the way they do. And it might be banal and trite, but the person who said it was not banal and trite. So I'll just bring it up and we can talk about it. So Eleanor Roosevelt, at least according to my research, that she was the person who said this, that people are in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
I agree.
And
Yeah.
I just want to,
Yeah.
bounce off how you feel about that. And like, do you have, can you think, as I said that, think of people that are in each one of those categories?
For sure. I mean, I can think of, uh, I talk about this sometimes. I had a very sad breakup a few years ago. And it was sad because everyone loved each other. It was not a dramatic breakup. It was sad. Everyone was sad. It just wasn't a match. And I think that that's one of the things that kind of cracked my heart open in a way that helped me to find spirituality. So I think that was a really big reason for me to have met them. And I think another way that I've heard this also said is it's not how long you're with a person, it's uh, the kind of scar they left, and not necessarily a bad scar. I'm saying scar like the mark they left, right? And I believe that wholeheartedly, because I can also think of like after that time of being after that breakup, like I wanted to be out in the town and dancing and having a good time all the time, like just like getting validation from the world. You're an attractive, smart human being, Brian, even if you're not with that guy anymore. Like I remember that being the attitude I had. And I had a friend who was like the friend who, that's what we did together. We went out and had fun, and that was it. And like we're not necessarily that close anymore, but that was what we needed to be for each other in that season, right? And so I do believe in this. And I also think that the belief in holding that belief does not diminish your relationship. I think it makes any relationship, I think it makes the relationships, even the ones you are in, more powerful, because then it steps out of that, I don't know, codependency stuff showing up where it's not healthy codependence, right? Or the attachment that's in the wrong direction or something like that. It just, if you have this idea around it, it just lets you give space to the individuals in your life to be individuals and in relationship with you at the same time.
And also for yourself too, like the more, I've been an actor for a long time, but we all have our insecurities and our, and our foibles and our horrible self-critic talking at us. And it always helps me to think about that and go like, okay, this is, this is happening for a reason.
Yeah.
This is momentary. This is
Yeah.
not wounded. Why are you letting this particular incident define who you are and what you feel about your artistry and this moment in time, right?
Yeah, I think that's so important, Christine. I think what you said is so, because it can be so easy to slip into that mindset. This means everything, or everything hangs on this job, or hangs on their reaction, or this validation, or that like because it's not, and also I think it's also dangerous because we often speak about this in the framework of getting bad news, but I also think positive news can have the same
Absolutely.
effect, right? Like they said they liked me, I have validation now, that casting director likes me or that manager likes me, and so I'm now validated, and that is like just giving you a less, it's weakening the muscles to the next time something bad happens, it having its way with you in a way, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then for me, this is huge because that's sort of all the things that you just described, the good and the bad, have me written all over it as in my artistry. So so it's something I come back to a lot. So the last thing I want to ask, and
Yes.
most artists answer this question very quickly and easily and definitively. So it's just an interesting cocktail question. Uh, are you a person who is more interested in being interesting or interested?
Interested.
Yeah.
That's
You
easy.
want to
Yeah.
explain
Yeah.
why?
Damn it, I just have the curiosity hunger of everything. Now, I mean, it's been in this conversation I've had with you, I've been having to bite my tongue to want to ask questions back to you as you're interviewing me here. And so, I am endlessly curious, and I find that my curiosity is what helps me to stay out of judgment. I find that my curiosity is what compels me, like my curiosity is what compels me to connection. So what I mean by that is, yes, I want to learn more about the person, but then also when I know this happens to me, when I read the New York Times, it is because I'm thinking about how I can now share this to connect with someone else. And my curiosity there is always of service to connection. And so the interested is so much more active too than me. Interesting feels like I'm wearing an ascot and smoking a cigar and leaning back in a chair, which is not me. Like I am on the edge of my seat. Tell me more. Like, so I'm definitely an interested person. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. And it's interesting what you said about wanting to share, because I feel like, evil Facebook, there's a lot that's evil about Facebook, right?
Yes.
But that is one of the things that's not evil about Facebook. I feel like my impulse to share has been increased by having Facebook as a platform. It's not about me sharing my stuff. It's about sharing stuff that I think will spark conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to find out what people are thinking, if they agree with me or disagree with me, or we can have a healthy debate. In this time of politics and this tumultuous time, that's a bit of a difficult negotiation, especially for me because I'm very outspoken. Mother who decides that she doesn't want to look at Facebook because she can't stand how outspoken I am. But yeah. So
well, if I can just say, just to kind of to wrap this up, because I know you said that was the last question, is that I love that you said that Facebook has created like an impulse in you to share, which Facebook, schmashbook, whatever for a second, but like that muscle or that habit of like, I want to share things with people can be built by it. And even if you're not sharing it on Facebook, it can be shared in different ways. But I love that you tapping into that idea. I didn't even think of that. That's great. Great. Thank you so much.
is there anything you would like me to ask that I haven't asked that you're dying to share? Speaking of sharing.
No, I think you went really far. I think I'm happy with what I got to share today. I think anything I should have said, I didn't say.
I don't think so. I mean,
Okay.
I'm not a coffee class person. Like, if you're going to talk to me, like, I go deep immediately.
Yeah.
Just because what's the point?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
So
please.
I
Thank
hope
you.
that's okay, because I didn't even prepare you for the fact that I was just going to dive in.
I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Hello.
And then if you want to do like your own off camera moment, if you want to do your own like sign off, Christine, that's like, thank you so much for that, Kathy, right? Okay.
Yep. Yep. So thank you, Brian Patacca, for being my very first guest. So excited. And I love this conversation, and I'm excited to have more. And thank you for giving me the platform. So like everybody, practice self-care, be interested, figure stuff out, be creative, and, just be good, be kind, be gentle, be a critical thinker. I think if I were to have my own podcast, I would call it critical thinking.
Got it. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much for the chance to be on your show. I'd
Thank
love to come
you.
back sometime if you'll have me.
Please come back.
Great. All right. And then there'll be this. That's so great, Christine. So great. Thank you for being also, I hate to use the word guinea pig. Thank you for being my first person to do this with me. Try it and like, we'll see how it works in the edit, but that was really fun. And I appreciate it and giving me the chance to go deep and give me all those faces while I'm doing it, since we can't make noise while we're talking to each other. I appreciate
Great.
that. So there'll be some music and and then we're going to switch over and we're going to talk to you now. I'm going to make sure all my questions are ready. Okay. And so I might do an intro now, Christine, but it won't be the intro that happens during the show. This is just for me to get us started, right? So everybody, I'm really excited today. I have Christine Bruno on the podcast, and I'm excited because, first of all, I spent so much time with her. So let me just start over again. Welcome to Brian Breaks Character. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm welcoming to the show today Christine Bruno, who is an actress and an activist. And actress I put first because I think that when you have such a powerful platform as activism, it can sometimes get the headline in your life, when we know as an artist that is also a really big freaking headline for you. So I want to make sure I underline both of those as I bring her on today. And Christine, welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me, Brian. I'm so excited to be here.
Good. Yay. Okay. So Christine, I want to just, give everybody a rundown of what you do in your life, including acting. I want to keep saying that because I know when we're multi-hyphenates, acting sometimes gets the last thing we're saying. So I want to make sure that we underline that for you.
For sure. So I do, again, I am a multi-hyphenate, several. I wear lots of hats. I'm an actor. I am also a teaching artist. I'm a disability inclusion consultant. I have an MFA in acting and directing, so I do a bit of directing. I sort of didn't choose that path after graduate school, but it is one of my hyphenates. I feel like warrior should be a hyphenate too.
Oh, I love that. And I will say, Christine, I've spent quite a bit of time with your website and your materials and getting to know you a little bit more before you even came today, before we actually met each other even. And warrior is a word that I would ascribe to the work that you do. And you do a lot of work. And I know that a lot of it is thankless and people aren't even seeing the work that you're doing behind the scenes. And what we're here to talk about today is primarily the DEI work that you do and to just kind of help this audience, which is mostly creatives, understand. They may not even know what DEI stands for. They may also totally know and might not know that disability is one of the things that we want to talk about in that category. So, it's part of what my hesitation in this is, I bet, Christine, you have to say the same things over and over and over and over again. I see you laughing.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's to the same people over and over and over again.
You're going to be really attentive listeners today, so you can say it to us once. Okay.
Sure.
So what are the top 3 things you have to say when you are going out as a DEI expert or the things you want people to hear?
Okay. I think that, first of all, I should probably make it clear that I'm an activist and a disability inclusion consultant, specifically to the entertainment industry, arts and culture organizations. So I don't do advocacy or inclusion work for, like, say, corporations. I mean, I will if they want me to come and talk to their employees or something like that, or do an audit, an accessibility audit of their space. But my expertise is really the industry, and that just comes from being an artist myself.
Right.
And building off of my need to advocate for myself. So I say that only to bring it around to answer your question. The thing that I would want people most to know is that disabled people are America's largest minority. I'm going to say that again, because many people don't get that. Disabled people are America's largest minority. By America's largest minority, I mean that 1 in 4 people in this country identify as having a disability. 1 in 4, that's approximately 25% of our population and 65 million people.
Wow.
So right there, Like that, if you take nothing else away from this conversation, take that away.
Yeah, and and Christine, what that brought up for me is two things. First, compassion so much for the stranger, the person you don't know, because you have, like we say, you have no idea what anyone's carrying on their back, or they're a warrior in their life. They're all right. And then the other piece that came up for me is how invisible it seems when we see representation, and that must be supremely frustrating for you as you think about this. And then in disparate, meaning when you are a person of color, we can see it. Probably, maybe, I don't know. That's not true for everybody, so I want to make a blanket statement here, right? But there's a way to identify. There are boxes to check off, and there are places to. Right. So can you speak a little bit around? You talked about this a little bit when we spoke before around the idea of it, like the movement has a little bit of a. It's like on plates that are moving around. It doesn't have as quite of a face, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It's a great way to put it, because disability is, and this is one of the other things that I wanted to say that I want to leave people with, is the two other things, and they're kind of like catchy phrases. They're sound bites.
Great, we'll remember them even better.
Yeah, I do that purposely.
Yeah.
One is disability is not a technical skill. It's a lived experience. And that is specifically as it relates to our industry. Right. And I'm sure we'll talk about that more as we go.
Yeah, I want to go deep on that.
That's the soundbite. And the other one is a piece of knowledge that I drop a lot. And I steal this phrase from my dear friend, Lawrence Carter Long, who's one of the most amazing disability activists that you'll ever meet. He said, disability is the only club that anybody can join at any time. So just like, let that sit for a second. So if you think this doesn't apply to you, it might not right now. It definitely applies to somebody within your inner circle. If we take the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, right? And the 1-to-4 ratio, it definitely will apply to somebody in your inner circle. And the chances are, if you live long enough, it will eventually apply to you. So
yes. Yeah. I love that's that grabs you right away when you say it that way. Yeah. So when you and I appreciate you framing this to make sure that we're here and we're specifically speaking, because that's where your expertise is in the entertainment industry and creative people, right? So as you're in this way of being, and this is like this activism is part of what's come part and parcel for you as an actor. Let's be really, really clear, because as an actor, you're advocating for yourself all the time.
All the time.
And so can you just give me the genesis of, like, it feels murky to me where you're like, I'm going out there and I'm putting myself as an actor, and then I'm also having to like advocate for every single actor in the world who's disabled at the same, like, how did that come to be? Can you give us a little bit of the actual story of that for you?
Absolutely. So, and it's funny because it's a very specific point in time. And whenever I talk about this, I can, so I've always been an artist, like right out of the gate. Like I started studying piano and voice lessons at 5 years old. And I was always the only person I knew that was disabled. Certainly the only person I knew pursuing a career in the arts. I mean, I grew up, I'm not going to tell you my age, but I did not grow up living under the benefit of the ADA, which has its problems, but I did not grow up with that being the default, right? So everything I did was sort of under the umbrella of okay, the world is not built for me, but I'm going to force my way in, which is what I did. So I took the typical trajectory of any actor. I studied. I went to undergrad. I did my undergrad at Skidmore, and I was a double major, theater and political science, because my parents wouldn't allow me to just be a theater major. So, like, typical story.
Yeah.
When I did that, so I graduated from Skidmore with honors, and then I went to San Francisco. And I worked in the theater for various theaters for 5 years, and I started teaching when I was in San Francisco. And then I decided I wanted to come to New York. I wanted to come back east, because San Francisco, if you haven't figured it out already, I'm a very East Coast person. My energy is very direct, very East Coast. Not that I didn't love living in San Francisco, because I did. but I'm just, my fire is faster,
Okay.
and I
Yeah.
think more demanding and more direct. So I lost patience with living in Northern California,
Okay.
even though I love it. So I came to New York, which is what I always wanted to do, but my parents wouldn't allow me to.
Okay.
Because at the time that I was going to college, New York was not a place that you wanted to be as a young
Yeah.
woman, particularly a young woman with a disability.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
um,
So wait, I want to pause myself there because even as I say yeah in that moment, I actually don't know how to empathize with that experience more than understanding you saying a young woman with a disability. Can you really paint the picture of what that's like where I would see is I'd love it if you could help us there.
yeah, sure. Just logistically, I think I said at the beginning, I have cerebral palsy, which is a mobility disability. The way that it manifests itself for me is as a mobility disability, particularly affects the way that I walk. So it's not easy for me to get around the city. And when I first moved here, for the first, okay, so I've been here, yeesh, 25 years now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So for the first 14 years, I lived in apartments that were not accessible. Um, and so that meant that I walked everywhere. Now I use a mobility scooter only because I now live in a building that has an elevator. So I'm able to do that. I wasn't able to do that for most of the time that I lived here. And I also didn't do that in San Francisco. I went back to San Francisco, and I've been back many times, but at one time in particular, I went back, I think it was 2009, and I didn't have the scooter. And I said, how the hell did I do this? How
Wow.
did I do this for 5 years? That's
Wow.
because I was 20 years younger,
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I myself, that's how I did it. But yeah, getting around this city is not friendly to disabled
Mm,
people,
mm,
particularly, well, any disabled people. I don't care if you have an intellectual disability or you're deaf or you have a mobility disability. It just is not friendly to
mm.
people.
Got it.
It just isn't. It's not physically accessible in a lot of ways. Um, people, New Yorkers are great, but and I don't mean to get political here at all, but like agencies are not great. Cops are not great if you
Mm.
have a disability. At least in my experience, I have not had a good experience with people that are paid to protect and serve. They're not protecting and serving me. So
And when you experience like that, are you experiencing like a total lack of understanding? I don't want to get too far off a tangent here, but I also want to make sure that we don't miss this piece of your experience.
um I'm you know what? It'd be one thing if what I said was that it was a lack of understanding and it ended there. Like that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
What I find so disheartening and infuriating is not only the lack of understanding and the lack of knowledge, but the lack of, like, who gives a crap. They don't care.
Mm, got it.
They don't care and they don't want to know. But I
Mm.
mean, I'm generalizing here.
Sure, sure. I think we get that. We get that you're general, right? And right,
I just want to be clear,
right,
particularly in this day and age. I don't want to, I want to not paint anybody with a broad brush.
right. And for you, and then your in like in a specific experience of that would be, is it like just to give us a picture into what that would look like for Christine, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, simple, trying to take the bus and having cops or FedEx or post office or UPS parked in the bus stop,
Mm,
which makes it impossible for me to get on the bus because the bus has to pull over to the curb to let out the ramp in which I can get
right.
onto the bus.
Yeah.
And they're not allowed to stop in the middle of the street, obviously, because it's
Hmm.
hazardous. So they will not stop at all.
Got it.
I have
Yes.
gotten into many altercation with a policeman, a policewoman, an ambulance driver, a FedEx driver. This is the downside or the upside, depending on who you are. If you're my mother, you would say it's the downside of being a very direct, outspoken person. Have no compunction at yelling at the cops
Got
and
it.
tell them to do their job.
And
So
also what I'm just noticing, Christine, and my own, I'm not a cop, right? So it's not necessarily my job to know what you just
oh,
described. But as a human being, I would like to know what you just, because I rode the bus when I was in New York City, of course, when I lived there. And like, I would not have, unless you were standing next to me or on your scooter next to me, I would know that that was what you needed and be able to witness. I would have had to have a life experience of seeing it to be able to think that way. So that's part of why, we're having this conversation today. So just wake us up a little bit more to places where we might be missing, and
yeah.
also to tap into yourself as how you've done this as an actor. So I know I took you off a tangent here as we were talking about
Oh,
getting to New York. So as you got to New York, you were pounding the pavement in the way that you pounded the pavement,
yep,
right? Right.
yeah.
And how did it become, I don't know if it
Had
became
to
clear to you.
converge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was to be honest with you, as these things are often are, completely by accident.
Okay.
No, it was serendipitous. I was participating in 2000. I guess it was 2005. Yeah, 2005. Wow, so 15 years ago. I was participating in an event that was being co-sponsored by an organization called, at the time it was called Non-Traditional Casting Project, which was an organization that advocated for actors of color and actors with disabilities, a nonprofit. And they were partnering with, at the time, AFTRA, the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, on an event that was called, I think it was called Creativity and Assistive Technology. So it basically was, how do some disabled artists use assistive technology in their creative practice?
Okay.
And as part of that event, they had a showcase component.
Okay.
So they had auditions, and six of us, six of us got picked to be part of this showcase, and we did scenes. It was a little bit of as it always is, a dog and pony show, but
Sure. Sure. Sure.
necessary dog and pony show.
Right.
And so after that, I never forget, I was in Northern California, funnily enough,
Uh-huh.
visiting friends. I was staying in this beautiful house of this people with the guy I was with in one country.
Oh,
I
lovely.
got a phone call from the executive director of Non-Traditional Casting Project, who said, I was very impressed by you um, during this thing that we did. You're very articulate, and I have this position that's a part-time disability advocate for the organization that I run. And the person that was doing the job is not an artist, and had to leave the job. She was also a person with a disability. I think she might have been blind. Had to leave the job for government reasons, because she was in danger of losing her benefits if she continued working, which is a whole other
Yeah.
conversation, right?
Yeah.
So she left the job, and she said, is this something that you would be interested in? Because I find that while there is a good awareness around representing artists of color and full inclusion for artists of color, there's still, people need a lot of, industry professionals need a lot of hand holding when it comes to the understanding of the inclusion of disabled artists.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it needs to be
Yeah.
its own position. And I said, yeah, having no
Yeah. I would say you had no idea what the job is almost. It sounds like,
no
yeah.
idea what the job entailed. The only requirement I had is, I said, yeah, I'll jump in. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'll jump in, provided you understand that first and foremost, I am an artist. And if
Yeah.
an opportunity comes along, because the job was part-time, I said, if an opportunity comes along for me to practice my craft, I need to be allowed to do that. And part of the great thing about this organization was they maintained a database. At the time, it was artists of color and artists with disabilities. Now it's just artists with disabilities, which we'll get to later. But because they were the only organization at the time doing that, because the internet was fairly new.
Ah,
So in 1995, they developed a website where artists of color could, put their headshots in, as like now casting, or like,
yeah,
actors,
yeah.
that's right. Um, and where industry professionals could come to find them. So they had their sort of like own username and password, and they
Right,
would access the database to find folks.
right.
Um, I said, so provided that I am able to include myself in whatever pool goes out to any of these industry professionals,
Good
and that
job advocating for yourself. I'm all about it. I love that. So good,
that was
Christine.
it. That was,
Yeah.
and so that was the start of a 12-year
Wow.
job, until it ended in 2000, at the end of 2017, when the organization unfortunately folded.
Awful. Got it. And so when did you become educated as just being someone who worked there, or were you suddenly like a sponge, or were you like, I'm reading everything, or how did that kind of, just to give us a sense of how you got like,
And
yeah, your education around it, beyond living the experience, the education around how do I do this piece of advocating? Because so many people who are listening, when I'm talking to actors, especially in recently, are really tied to their acting having an impact and not just doing any old acting job and wanting
yeah,
it to change the world, which is what I think it's been given to us as an art form in the first place to do.
yeah.
And so hearing this will really help them to see how that happened for you. Because I think the educating piece, you can't just be like, I'm an activist and now I know what I'm doing. Like there's history behind you, please. And so how did you get that education, I would say?
I think, it's interesting because some of it is just my personality. Like, I didn't know it because I never like thought of it in this framework until I started doing this work. And even when I was doing this work, I didn't really think about it. But like now, one of the things that I stress when I teach workshops for disabled actors, but anybody from a marginalized community, is like, you need to be your own self advocate. You have to. I say that for anybody, but particularly people from marginalized communities. Because if you're not in your own corner, no one knows better than you do what you need.
Mm.
And you have to speak up. You can't expect people to know what you need, right? And
Which,
you know,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what I'm
yeah,
hearing in that inside of that is actors are already asked to advocate for themselves, and you're saying, and you have to advocate even more
yeah,
so. You gotta go harder into it. So
yeah,
when you're saying that to, I'm making the story that this is a young actor you're talking to, but it might not be. But like you're saying this, when you're saying to them, what are you hoping that they will do that's maybe different than you might see from an able? Is that what we call a non?
I use the word non-disabled
Great, great. And
because,
part of, yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
I'll just unpack that for a
Yeah.
second, because a lot of people do use able-bodied, and yeah, I don't, that's not one that I'm willing to get on my horse for. There
Okay.
are certain terms that I will get on my horse for. That is not one of them, but I use non-disabled because able-bodied carries with it an assumption that quote unquote ability is the standard,
Mm,
right?
mm-hmm,
Is the
mm-hmm.
default
Yeah.
standard. So
Yeah.
if you say non-disabled, it takes away that, it
Yeah.
gives it less weight.
Great.
You
Yeah.
know,
And I want to just say something, Christine. I know we're going a few directions here, but one of the things that Christine and I agreed to before we did this is that I gave her full permission to correct me instead of educating we did some education with me beforehand, but so that she has the opportunity to correct me if I am not using the word that is the one I went to, which is a word of being supportive and not being a jerk, basically. So, okay. So back to our question,
yeah.
which is around this idea of what would you want that young actor to, on that extra advocacy? What does that look like that you would want? Is it like to say something directly to casting? Is it to their manager? Is it to their agent? Is it
I Well, I definitely feel like having an honest conversation with your agent and manager, if you are fortunate enough to have
right?
that kind of representation, like, you need to be straight up honest about what you're expecting from them. Just like and this goes for any actor. Like, when you're a new actor, or even not a young actor that's just starting out, you're just so happy to have somebody who's like interested in you in what you do
Yeah.
and willing to invest time and resources into you, right? I mean, that you just go, oh yeah, I'll just take whatever.
Anyone. I'll take whatever.
Right?
Yeah, yeah,
I'll
yeah.
take whatever you give me. I'll go on whatever crappy audition that makes me appropriate somebody else's culture or puts me in a role that I don't feel comfortable with because I feel that it's appropriative or offensive. Like, we've all done that. We've all done it. And what I'm saying is, I'm not trying to push people to be me or like me. I'm just trying to say, like, figure out what works for you so that you're not shortchanging yourself. You might not be the most outspoken person. It might not be comfortable for you to go into a casting director. Just no, this is specific. Well, it's not specific to disabled people, but there are certain things that casting directors are not allowed to ask you. And most people don't know that.
No, please give us some of them. What are some of the ones that you encounter?
So like, what's your disability? What's wrong with you? Where, where
What's
are you?
wrong with you? No human being is allowed to ask that. My gosh.
Where are you from? Like that, I'm going outside of my own experience.
Really?
Oh yeah, I have a friend, colleague in the industry who's been in the industry for decades, and she is a well-known person. She, and she's not white.
Okay.
And she says she would go into auditions and someone would say, "So where are you from?" She'd be like, "I'm from New Jersey." "But where are you from?" "I'm from New Jersey." "Well, where are your parents from?" "They're from New Jersey." So they will try to find every way possible to find
Oh,
out,
yeah. And I don't mean to laugh. I'm laughing at I don't know what I'm laughing. I guess I'm laughing at the incredulousness of someone continuing to push that hard. Okay. So as we're talking about so these things kind of, so you said it was part of your personality was that because you're always advocating in that way. And then how else do you think you also gained that like knowledge? Was it practice hands-on of being out in the, yeah.
Definitely hands-on,
Got it.
definitely. I mean, I think I have to give credit to my old boss, Sharon Jensen, because honestly, I think she saw something in me that went, "Oh yeah, this makes sense." And this is something that I think needs to be cultivated, and good for her and good for me,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think she recognized that. So I say that just only in answer to your question, to say that I don't think this work is for everybody. Like in terms of going, oh yeah, I can wear this hat as well as wear my creative hat. I don't think it's for everybody, but I do think as an artist, especially an artist from a marginalized community, you need to have some sort of activist advocate practice in your toolkit. You just need to.
Can you say that again? Because I thought that's so good, Christine. Say that one more time.
I think for every artist, but particularly for artists from marginalized communities, you even if full-on activism is not your thing, you need to have the skills of an advocate and an activist as part of your toolkit to be an artist, to be effective in this business. Because if you're not a straight, white, non-disabled man, nothing's going to be handed to you. And even in this time when quote unquote diversity, and I really hate that word, but I use it because it's the word, right? Even now that people are actively looking for folks from marginalized communities, you're still gonna have to prove yourself. You still are. I can tell you how many times I have heard people in writers' rooms, producers say, you'll go, "Oh, well, do you have, this story written by a person of color?" Or you talk about telling stories and they go, "Oh yeah, well, we tried that last year and it fell on its face, so like we're not going to do that again." Like literally, to quote Hamilton, like, "I'm not throwing away my shot." We literally do get one shot. as to where, you know, a white dude is going to get as many shots as they want. So, I mean, and maybe I'm being a little hyperbolic now in this day and time, but I say that very deliberately to say, like, look, think of it like this is the shot that I get to make myself undeniable to whoever I'm in front of in that moment, whether I'm, you know, in front of a casting director, whether it's a callback for the director or producer, whether I'm in a writer's room, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And what I'm hearing you say also is like, know how important that shot is. And that's why that's why you're going to advocate for yourself, because that shot is so important. So
Yeah.
I wanted to get back to something you said in the beginning, which is so important, I think, where you said, and I'm probably going to mess this up, but we were talking your definition of, or your explanation of why we shouldn't see non-disabled actors playing disabled characters. Can you really go deep on this so we can understand it? Because I'll just be very explicit here. Like, my boyfriend, who's not an actor at all, right? He's like, I don't understand, why does it matter? And I understand, and he's a very woke person, raised by two therapists, whatever, but I understand why he doesn't get that right away. And I think this is a part of our education where we, as acting is acting, is the period at the end of that sentence. And the way you explain this to me is so clear and so helpful. So help us really get this.
Sure. So this is probably, again, when we started this conversation, I said one of the big takeaways that I always want people to get is disability is not a technical skill. It's a lived experience, right? So if you just tie, I think I said to you in our earlier conversation, that, and sometimes this ruffles feathers, but if you really sit with yourself and you take the emotion out of it, if you get ruffled by this, if you sit with yourself and you think about what I'm actually saying, you'll see that it is the truth. That 99% of what I am saying about the disability community and disabled performers applies to all marginalized communities. 99% of what I have to say. So, with that being said, what I'm talking about is the same thing that we went through 30, 40 years ago with, I'm going to choose Black actors, right? Because we're still going through it with other communities, as we know, right? But it's the same thing. Blackface was very common, right? Very common. So that is a clear appropriation of somebody's culture and lived experience. We don't do that anymore, right? We don't have blackface anymore. So what I'm saying is it's the same thing. If you are engaging in appropriating disability lived experience and culture, you're engaging in what we call crip face, or some people call disability drag, right? When people were, performing in minstrel shows and stuff, people called that acting too. So why is that acting? Why is that not acting now, but this is acting? Why is it acceptable to put someone in a wheelchair who doesn't use a wheelchair? Why is it acceptable to CGI like Ryan Murphy just did in his new show? And this is one of the things that I was saying earlier, that with my sharing on Facebook, I'm gonna just call it out because I'm
Yeah,
pissed.
please do it. I would love you to tell us this Ryan Murphy thing that you're pissed off
And
about.
you can cut it out too if you want.
No,
So,
I'm not even cutting out you saying you can cut it out.
so here's the thing. Let me just be clear, because I want to make sure that I answer the question in the way that people get what I think you want me to say, which is, we're not, when I'm talking about not appropriating disability culture and that it's more than just acting, I'm saying that I'm talking about a history of exclusion. I'm talking about, if the playing field were leveled for everybody, if everybody could play any role, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. What I'm saying is, there's such a history of exclusion for disabled artists that oftentimes we're not allowed to play ourselves, right? So that's the distinction that I'm making when your boyfriend says, I don't get it. And I understand why people don't get it. But I mean, if you look at the trans community, it's the same thing. They're just, for some reason, and I think I know what some of the reasons are. Like 10 years ago, we weren't hearing about advocating, appropriation of the trans community. And they have, and I use this expression, I don't know why, but they have um, leapfrogged over the disability community in terms of their advocacy and their visibility. And I'm thrilled. I'm sad for my community because people still think, they no longer think that appropriating trans culture is acting, but they still think that appropriating disability culture is acting.
Christine, this is so powerful. And I cannot wait to tell Jake what you've said, because I think he will so get what you've just described. And I hope that all the listeners are, as you're listening to this, you're getting that the appropriation is. And what's so interesting as you say this is I go back to what you said in the beginning, that beautiful quote you gave about that this is the only club that everyone could, what is the quote that you said earlier? It was so good.
That anyone can join at any time.
And so, and we, in that belief in ourselves, there's something around, to me, there's some kind of sneaky belief is, well, I could be disabled. So that is why I might feel like it's okay for me to, because I know what it's like to have a limp when I stub my toe. No, that is not what this is. Because this is like you said, a lived experience, right? That is not the same whatsoever. And so what you said that is so beautiful. It makes me also think of like when Mickey Rourke, I think, is playing an Asian character in Breakfast at Tiffany's, right? Totally unacceptable. Would never happen today. It's like it's offensive, really offensive, right? And how it's so easy to not write that same appropriation on that. It's so powerful. So I have another question. This might be challenging. So does a disabled person have to play only their disability?
Oh, hell no.
Okay. Right. Because you've experienced, that would be like saying to a Black actor, you're only allowed to play, I don't know, this kind of, you've had this kind of job, so you can only have this kind of job or something.
That's right. I mean, the ultimate goal is that we play anybody, because we are anybody. If you agree with the notion that we're 25% of the population of this country, then we should be able to play anybody. We should be able to play doctors, lawyers, the friend, the mom, the whatever, the teacher, the asshole. Like that's another, it's like we don't, people with disabilities are put in, and also all other marginalized groups are put in such stereotypical, because we don't have writers in the writers' rooms who are writing from that lived experience. And we should all operate from a principle. Here's another quote from my friend Lawrence Carter Long. The disability community in the 80s, well, maybe it was the 70s, coined, these two South African dudes in the 70s coined this term, nothing about us without us. And the disability community has been using that for a long time. But a few years ago, my friend Lawrence Carter Long and my other friend Jim Lebrecht, who is the director of Crip Camp, shortened that to say nothing without us, meaning that we should have a seat at every table, whether or not the conversation is about our community.
Yes, 100%. Right? Yes.
Every community. So if we've got a diverse, quote unquote, diverse and inclusive and an equitable writer's room, then all of this crap we're seeing is particularly in film. Like I will say that theater and television are doing a much better job.
Are they? Okay, I want to ask you, can you tell us where are some places where you're seeing this being done well? Where you're saying, like, I can say, like, they have done, this is good work, or they're doing the right kind of representation. Where do you see that?
Right. Well, let me just drop another factoid.
Okay.
And then I'll talk about that. So for folks who don't know, only 5% of characters on television, and I'm talking specifically television now, only 5% of characters on television are disabled characters. Only 2% of those 5% of disabled characters are played by disabled actors.
Wow.
So that shows you, like, if we're America's largest minority, our greatest public platform, which is the media, is throwing us under the bus at every chance it gets. And it's no wonder that people like your boyfriend say, well, I don't get it.
I don't understand. Yeah. So wait, and so for me, it feels like a mistake of omission. Do you understand when I say that?
For whom?
For disabled people. a mistake of omission, right? So like as we talk about inclusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
That they're being omitted from story because there's no one there saying this is part of the story of our fabric of our country. This is part of the story of what it means to be a person, whatever country, actually doesn't matter if this country or not. This is what it means to be a human being, that they're being omitted because no one is, like you said, they're not in the writer's room, they're not producing for it, or they're not understanding. And then
Right.
the other piece that I heard you got around this conversation is that you can be stereotypically cast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that goes with any other community. And then let's not forget about the intersectionality of communities.
Right.
There are Black disabled people too. I mean, this is something else we talked about. Like, I'm just trying to shove everything in here because,
this is what we're here for. Are you
but
good on, oh wait, pause. Are you good on time? Cause we're a little
I'm
over.
fine.
Okay,
I'm
great. Okay,
fine on time.
great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
great.
so like age.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we know that age is a huge factor in our industry for women.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So think about if you come from a marginalized community and you're a woman of a certain age, you're going to work less. Just
Mm-hmm.
straight up, you're going to work less. Like, what was that documentary by Rosanna Arquette? Was it called Searching for Deborah Winger? Which at the time, I don't know if people have seen it. I'm old enough to remember when it came out, right? But, or if you even know who Rosanna Arquette is.
Yes. And yes.
Arquette is, right? So Rosanna is her sister who was acting before. She's a little older than Patricia. She's still an actor, but she made this documentary called Searching for Deborah Winger, because Deborah Winger dropped out of the industry
Yeah.
at around 40-ish, right? And it's just interviews with all 40 plus women talking about, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they're all white women, which is an interesting,
Mm-hmm.
right? But all talking about like the fact that once they turned 40, like they were persona non grata from 40 to 60. And then after you turn 60, the parts start coming again if you haven't been so, demoralized by the shitty part of our industry, right?
Yeah.
So think about if you come from one or more if you identify as one or more of those groups,
Right.
the more groups you identify with, the lower down on the ladder you're going to be, right?
Right. Yeah. So as
There's
you think about that, I'm going to go back to that question I had before, which I know you're about to
yeah,
answer, which is like, so where do we go from here and where do you see it modeled well? Where do you actually
yeah.
see, and I would love it and you might not be able to do this, Christine, but I might press if we might be able to figure this out, is where, like, are there certain production companies or networks or places where there are real advocates where you can say that is a model of someone who,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. So I would say, first of all, I'm going to give a shout out to the Casting Society of America,
Right.
because I think, and a lot of people don't know this, and I'm just going to say this as a general rule for all actors, and I'm saying it wearing my actor hat, but also my advocate hat, because I know this, because I have deep and ongoing relationships with many casting directors in this industry because of my advocacy, right? Please know that casting directors are your friends. Please know that they're your friends, particularly if you identify as coming from a marginalized community. They are working so hard, particularly the CSA, the Casting Society of America. These folks are working so hard to get us in these rooms because they recognize that the pipeline needs to be fed. And if we go to our same, and I'm talking to you agents too, if there are any agents on this call, I'm talking to you too. Don't just, you need to, and I'm gonna be specific about the communities that are really victims of this, which is the disability community and probably the Native American community, and maybe to some extent the trans community. Is like, we're out here, we're talented. If you don't have some of us on your roster, you are doing yourself a disservice, because there is money to be made. There is money to be made from us. We have skills. Like I said, I have an MFA. I know so many talented disabled actors. If you don't have, I'm not even going to ascribe a number to it, but if you're not representing talent with disabilities, then honestly, shame on you. You're way doing yourself a disservice, because right now there is one agency and one department in particular that has the lion's share, and I would say probably 90% of the disabled actors with representation of in this country are represented by one small department of 3 people who are amazing, but it's a department of 3 people in one agency. I happen to be represented by them. They're fantastic, but you know,
You'd like to see it in more places, is what I'm hearing you say.
well,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because they're not going to be around forever, right? And part of their gestalt too is they want to see their clients go to other agencies as well. They're not trying to be proprietary and hold on to the. So I think we need to do a better. The industry needs to do a better job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So any industry people who are not actors on this call, you need to do a better job of understanding the community. Talk to people like me. Talk to the disabled talent you know. If you don't know any disabled talent, you know, email me. I'll put you in touch with, like I'm speaking to a writer's room next week.
Okay.
They reached out to me because somebody who works on that team knows somebody who knows me.
Got it.
So I mean that's how it happens. I think you're gonna, I mean, I hate to be, you know what, I don't hate to be. I used to I used to be very wary of sort of leaning on the financial, on the business side of things, the cut and dry bottom line side of things. Like, yeah, there is the moral imperative of hoping that people want to do the right thing. But in this day and age, like, I don't give a shit. I don't, I really don't. I don't
Well,
care why you do it, just do it.
mm-hmm.
And the fact of the matter is, in terms of disability, disabled people have $21 billion of discretionary income to spend. Just like any other community, they are more likely to spend their dollars where they see themselves adequately and accurately and authentically represented.
Christine, can I ask a question just as a business owner, as a man who is trying to make sure that people feel included in anything that I'm offering, right? It can, and so for me, I'm going to make this very particular. It's like my marketing is typically going to have photos and images and things like that. When I want to make sure that a disabled person feels included in my community, how would you suggest that I do that? I know that you say you don't work with corporate, but how, just so we can kind of start noticing, the rest of us who are listening, how do we see it? How do we look for when people are doing a good job of this, right?
Make sure that I'm going to go back to answer. I'm going to put a pin in that only because I realized I didn't answer like who's doing it well.
Yeah, who's doing well? Let's do who's doing well. Forget about me for a second. Okay.
CSA, but I just want to call CSA out that they are doing it well.
Great.
Right. And just so any casting directors out there know, CSA has a database they did an open call. They've got a database with they did an open call for trans actors and an open call for disabled actors, and I think they're doing another one. I don't know what this one is, but they're doing another one soon.
Okay, that's awesome.
And so they've got stuff.
Yeah.
So if you're a CSA member, go to them. Even if you're not a CSA member, if you're an independent casting director, they might, give you access to the database. Right. So there's that. So I think, like I said, film is still lagging behind. Desperately lagging behind. TV is doing much better.
Any shows in particular you'd point us to?
Yes, I will say, well, obviously Speechless is not on the air anymore, but like Special, I don't know if anybody's heard of Special.
Yeah, I love Special. It's great. I've watched all of it.
There's actually, I'd say Netflix is probably at the moment doing better than anybody else overall.
Okay.
Right. Because there's some offerings, there's some autism is a big thing right now. And so there are shows now coming out, and what show is doing really well, and he's going to kill me for not mentioning him right out of the gate, but New Amsterdam is probably, I would say, the best example that I can think of right now of equity and inclusion for disabled actors, because not only do they have two not only have they had a smorgasbord of disabled actors in guest star roles, they have, to my knowledge, it might be more by now, but they have two disabled actors in recurring roles of medical professionals. They're
Got it.
non-disabled, so they're nondescript, which is what I was talking about before. It's what we called nondescript roles, non-disability specific roles.
Got it.
So New Amsterdam is kicking it in that sense, and that is directly related to the work of their casting. So
Wow.
shout
Great.
out to David Caporelli-Otis who cast that show.
I love
But
David. I've known Dane since I first started acting in New York City. He's a wonderful man.
David is one of our biggest champions.
Really great.
You know, and then there's other things like the production of Oklahoma, where my dear friend Ellie Stroker won a Tony for an iconically sexy role where you would never think, nobody would ever think that, you know,
Yeah.
that a disabled woman wheelchair user would play Ado Annie. Like who, you know.
Right. This reminds me, yeah. And so, Christine, I'm challenged by this idea that I read in Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility around Jackie Robinson, of the way that we say it is a black man broke the color barrier. And what we really are saying is white people actually finally let a black man in, is the real,
that's right.
Right. And so, and we talk about Ali Stoker stories like that, where it's like Tony Award and how does that fit into the narrative for you when you're saying, put us in any old role you have, and then there's like a meteoric, like, oh my gosh, look what she did. It becomes very meritocracy kind of thinking about things, right? How does that fit into your advocacy?
That's a very, very good and nuanced question, and loaded question.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's great for Allie. It's fantastic. I mean, it's, you know, it's life-changing for Allie, which is what we all want as individual artists, right? We want that thing that's going to be life-changing for us, right? And for our careers. And hopefully, if you're somebody like Allie, it gives her a platform to speak out and make a difference for everybody else. And that, I would say, is why the more representation we can have, the better. But if we've got folks like Allie who, you know, whatever meteoric rise she's had, it depends on what people do with their advocacy. I mean, there's like Maysoon Zayed, who I don't know, most people might not know. She's a comedian. She's also an actress. She is also, she has cerebral palsy, and she's a Palestinian, right? And she has the most watched TED Talk ever.
Wow.
Like 10 million views.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, I mean, I think the more people break through, the better it is. But I'm here to tell you that there are lots of us of varying shapes, sizes, disabilities, colors, you know, whatever, gender identities. We're out there, and we're ready to work, and we need to be. We do this as a culture anyway. It's not just with disability, but we tend to, like, you know, the one person who breaks through, they're like, you know, then everything is them. Like
everything is Marilyn Monroe discovered walking down the street. Everything is right.
And then again, I'm gonna diss our industry a little bit. Like, people tend to be lazy. Industry professionals are lazy. I can't tell you, and this is nothing against Allie, and she knows this because we've talked about it. But being on the other side of the table, I see it all. So I can't tell you how many calls, once Allie started rising, how many calls, oh, we want Allie Stroker, we want Allie Stroker. I asked Allie Stroker, we want Allie Stroker. I'm like, but Allie Stroker's not available. And like, there are a lot of, not, you know, look, I could throw a rock out my window and hit 5 actors, right? I'm aware of that the pool of disabled actors is infinitely smaller right now, but the only way that we're going to grow it is if we stop, like, being, we want the flavor of the month, and we want to jump on the bandwagon of Allie Stroker. Like, Allie Stroker is the only one, because she isn't, and she knows she isn't, and she's too damn busy. She doesn't want to do everybody's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's taking projects down. So I think that's important. I want to, if I can, for 1 second, I really want to go back to this thing about Ryan Murphy.
Yeah.
And it's because it's bothering me. And I'm hoping that somebody who's listening to the podcast can help me. And I mean this sincerely. So, and I say this with the caveat that several of my friends have worked on Ryan Murphy shows, Allie included. And their careers have been very, very helped by being on a Ryan Murphy helmed project, right? So great, fabulous, fabulous. So Ryan Murphy has had a complicated, what I see as a complicated relationship. I'm trying to be very diplomatic here.
Okay.
If we were sitting in my living room and I was, had a couple of beers in me, I might not, but I'm trying to be diplomatic. He's had a complicated relationship with disability, as I see it, and a very uneven relationship with disability. So I asked this question, and I asked it the other day on Facebook. I really want to know what Ryan, the way I put it in my post was, what does Ryan Murphy believe in? I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but the reason I say that is because for those who follow Ryan Murphy shows, sometimes he's great with disability, authentic casting, storytelling. Like my friend Ryan Haddad is in The Politician. He's a recurring in Politician, an amazing character, allows him to show like all of his incredible gifts. And he has many incredible gifts, right? So apparently that role was written for a guy with cerebral palsy. So Ryan, perfect, great, right? He also happens to be Lebanese. So, so that's great. But then the other night I'm watching Ratched. And I'm just going to be honest and say, like, I don't always love Ryan Murphy's stuff, whatever it is. Some of it I adore, and other I don't. Like Glee, for obvious reasons, I have no interest in Glee. But that was early in his career. I mean, maybe not early in his career, but early. That was like such an explosion where the disability community came out in force and was like, you represented every other community appropriately and authentically. Why did you stick a guy in a wheelchair? So we thought, oh, great. Ryan Murphy is somebody who's going to keep pushing product out. He's going to keep making TV. So hopefully he'll learn from this. So I get very disheartened when I see on the one hand something like Politician, which is, diverse and has Ryan in it, or something like American Horror Story Freak Show, which has my good friend Matt Fraser in it in a starring role. Amazing, right? But then you get something like Ratched, which I've stopped watching on full disclosure after the beginning of episode 3 when I saw a quadruple amputee that was CGI'd. And this person has is playing a big role in this series, presumably, I assume, just by the nature of the storyline. And also the storyline is so sensational. It's like grotesque in a way. Like the way that it's set up without, look, I don't want to be what am I, spoiler, right? No spoiler alert. Disability is placed in that show in a way, at least in the first, the first 3 episodes, placed in a way that it's made to be a device, and the disabled person is the quote unquote wronged party. So it ends up taking this grotesque, like a macabre grotesqueness.
Yeah. I'm curious about your thoughts on, for example, we don't know the show. I have no plans to watch that show because it got horrible reviews. But if there are flashbacks with someone who is at the time non-disabled, where do you live in that land? How do you live in that?
Look, what they do to his legs and his arms in this episode 3 that I was just talking about. What did they do to them?
Oh, they made them disappear, right? Yeah. They cover them up, right? So why could you do the other?
Not them appear?
Yeah.
It's the Forrest Gump thing.
Yeah.
Could Lieutenant Dan, could they have, it's CGI, man. It's,
Yeah.
industrial like magic, whatever, whoever's doing that
Yeah.
stuff. We've got the technology. If we got the technology to wipe them out, we got the technology to put
So
them up.
smart, so smart in such a way we don't think. That's again reminding me of that idea of the omission thing that I was talking about
Yeah,
earlier, right? Right.
yeah.
So so I want to give our listeners a really great takeaway, and you have a really beautiful takeaway that we're going to make sure everybody can download if they want to, which is like the top 10. What do we call this thing? The top 10.
I think it's called The Language of Disability, Top 10 Do's and Don'ts or something. I don't know.
Can you give us a highlight of one or two that you see made
Sure.
every day, a mistake made every
Sure.
day?
But
Yeah.
can you think of, did you read it?
No, no, I printed it out. It's sitting over there.
Okay. All right. No worries. Because,
Okay.
I talk about this stuff all day, and I'm just interested in ones that you might have. Is
I
it
can look at
sitting
it. Let
right
me look
there?
at it. Yeah, yeah. Let me look at it right now. Oh, yeah.
Because what I like to do when I have this conversation is to make people look at it and tell me if there's ones that you're confused by. Like, why is that on the list?
Sure. I mean, there's certain ones I know never say these words, I think, which is like when it said, I mean, I'm not going to say the words I'm not supposed to say.
The R word, right?
The
The
R
R
word,
word,
yes. The M word, what around
right?
when it comes to little persons.
Yeah.
And then can you help me understand wheelchair bound, confined to wheelchair
That,
user uses a wheelchair? I mean, I would never say wheelchair bound necessarily. It's weird to
right.
me,
People
but
do it all the time, all
got it.
the time. And
Got it.
sometimes even people who use wheelchairs. And this
Okay.
is where it gets sticky
Right.
because I just had this conversation with a dear friend of mine the other day who's blind. Like, we disagree on language all the time.
Mm.
People disagree on language all the time. So let me first say that. And if I'm talking to you and you're a disabled person and you tell me that you prefer one thing that I would not use, I need to defer to you because I'm talking to you. So whatever you want me to use to refer to you, I'm going to give you the respect and use it, even if I hate it. It's happened, and I always throw up in my mouth a little bit when it happens, but it I I I have to put my money where my mouth is and be respectful of the person I'm talking to. And
Right.
I'll give you an example. I think I'll use the one that I used with you the other day. So, like, deaf people, if someone is deaf or hard of hearing, you do not use the term hearing impaired. Deaf people who have some hearing are considered hard of hearing, not hearing impaired. However, I find this a lot with older folks who lose their hearing. They prefer the term hearing impaired to hard of hearing. So if you are interacting with an older person who says, I prefer to be called hearing impaired, then just call them hearing impaired,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that, the community preference is hard of hearing,
Hard of
right?
hearing.
So
And hard of hearing is different than deaf, is what you're saying to me, because deaf is
that,
no hearing, is what you're saying.
that, yes,
Right.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. So,
And
okay, so wheelchair bound. So wheelchair bound is interesting because if you think, and this is like, if you just think about again, oh God, over the years, it seems like I have come up with so many of these sound bites are rolling around in my head and I don't realize that they're sound bites until I say them out loud. So here's another thing, and this will help anybody who is trying to navigate language around disability. Before you open your mouth, realize that most terms to describe disabled people were coined by non-disabled people. Does that make sense? Most terms that are used to describe disabled people were coined by non-disabled people, which means that the terms were thought up through using a non-disabled lens, right? So to go back to wheelchair bound, am I bound by my wheelchair? No, my wheelchair is a tool for independence, right? Any assistive device is exactly that: a hearing aid, crutches, a wheelchair, eyeglasses. Those are assistive devices to help us do what we need to do, right?
right.
If I don't have my glasses on, I'm wearing my glasses even though they're unflattering on camera because it's easier for me to see you if I have my glasses, right?
Right.
So
Yes.
it's not rocket science, but I also have this funny anecdote. Again, sorry, Lawrence, I keep quoting you. My friend Lawrence always says, think of the term wheelchair bound Like you should never use the term wheelchair bound unless you're talking about some kind of sexual something.
So,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
Unless it's purposeful, right?
right,
Unless the person using the wheelchair wants to be bound for a wholly different purpose.
right. Got it.
Intentionally.
So then I have
So,
another one that went on here. So, and this is one that I think that people can fall into very easily, which is overcoming, inspiring, brave,
well,
courageous.
yep,
Yeah.
yep, yeah.
Tell us
So,
tell us how do we, rather than tell us the danger, I think we get the danger, right? Can you tell us the
do you
better,
think?
the alternative? Maybe go ahead, go for it. Go ahead, tell us.
Because I don't even often think because I have this argument a lot with people who
Oh,
know
really?
me and love. Oh yeah, like they don't understand what problem I have with overcoming, brave, courageous, inspiring, right? Because those words in and of themselves, in a vacuum, are fine words,
Yeah, they sound totally
right?
like good compliments. Great things to hear.
Perfect,
Yeah.
fine words, but they're not fine if they're not earned. You know what I mean? They're not, and often in media, those things are not earned. Like they'll slap on they'll slap on the brave, inspiring, courageous for anybody, the inspiring story of da 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 da, for anybody who has a disability, right? Just because by the sheer nature of the fact that the person is disabled, people feel badly for them, for,
Mm,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
And our society is so built on the there by the grace of God go I, which is bullshit, right? It's just bullshit. And like particularly, again, quoting my friend Lawrence, he has a funny thing about the word inspire. Like the word inspire the word inspiration comes from inspiration. All it means is to breathe, right? So if you're calling me inspiring, but you don't know me, like you don't know that I've done anything to earn the term inspirational or inspiring, then you are putting that on me because I get up in the morning and I breathe. That doesn't make me inspiring.
And
Do you know what
so,
I mean?
yeah, so I guess, and this is where I'm getting the challenge piece, right? So when you talk about you being a young lady living in New York City and dealing with your disability while being in a city that doesn't deal well with disabilities, particularly, right? To
Yeah.
me, it sounds like you overcame something during that time because you overcame crappy, no ramp, nothing to like, I have to go up and down stairs. That sounds to me like, so I can ascribe to that story and overcoming. What you're saying is it's not my job to
That's right.
decide that for you.
That's right. You got it exactly right. Yeah, I didn't overcome. I'm just living my life. What I overcame was that asshole who, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yes.
That if anything is inspiring, it's the fact that I stand up to fools.
Yeah.
You know
What
what
it's,
I
and
mean?
also, yes. And it sounds like what these words are is these are broad strokes. And you're saying you need to look closer if you're going to try to describe my story. If you're going to try to
That's
describe,
right.
you need to lean in.
Right. You need to lean in. You need to know the person you're talking about. The broad strokes are not helpful, particularly if they're saccharine.
Mm.
You know, a lot of these terms are saccharine or euphemistic, shit like differently able. And what the hell is that? Seriously,
Yeah. I want to be
what
like, do you
is
have
that?
ESP? That's what it makes me think of. Like, oh,
Yeah,
do you have lasers that shoot out
exactly.
your eyes? So
Like,
wait,
yeah,
but wait,
why don't you just say I'm disabled?
right.
That's,
Well, and that's a
I
word
mean,
that I will say, we had a conversation. I didn't know how to use the word disabled properly. You were really, really great in clearing me up that like, that is the word you use.
well, it's the same as being like nobody, like disabled is not like we all know that that term is problematic. Like everybody in the disability community knows that that's not the perfect term, but it's the one we have for now. And so what we've chosen to do is similar to the queer community. We're taking it back. We're taking it back. It's an identity first model. So I'm not ashamed of my disability. I'm taking it back. I'm identifying. That's why I identify as a disabled person and not as a person with a disability, although I use those terms interchangeably when I'm working. But my personal identification is as a disabled person. You don't hear people go, "Oh, I'm a person with blackness." I'm a black person,
Right,
right?
right, 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 right. I love the way you say
It's,
that. Yeah.
you know,
It also feels
so I
like
mean,
it feels pronoun related because it feels like it is you're choosing the word you're
totally,
wanting to be described as. Right. Right. You have to be more careful
totally,
around that.
totally,
Right.
totally pronoun. And there's one more on that list probably that you are questioning at the
Yes, it's
bottom.
special. And especially because we talked about the
That's
show.
where,
It's
yes,
what?
that's why, that is why I hate the name of that show, because that's not the name of his book. His
Well,
book
what I
is like,
wondered about the show, so I have a question though, because the show feels like it is, if you don't watch it, you don't know this, but
right.
special, it feels like it is saying, not like, it feels like it's a play on the word of special.
It
Do you know
is.
what I mean?
It
Right.
absolutely
Right. But you have to see it to
absolutely.
get it. You have to see
You
it
have
to,
to see it to get it.
right.
Exactly.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
his book is very clear. It's not that. It's something like special and other stupid words that people use to, it makes it very clear that it is a play on words.
Got it.
So in terms of the word special, and the reason why I want to bring it up is because people use it all the time, and it's still widely used in education. So if there's anybody on this call that has a kid who's disabled, or as a teacher in the school system, a teaching artist in the school system, they force you to use these terms. Or anybody who's writing a grant, they
Whoa.
force you to use these terms, right? And so special needs, like my needs are not special, right? My needs are the same as your needs. I need to eat. I need to have friends. I need to breathe air. I need to do what I love. I need to get an education, right? Those needs are not special. So they should not be considered special needs. It's like again, I'm dating myself, but in the mid 80s, Eric Stoltz, again, appropriation, played a character named Rocky Dennis.
Mhm.
Where he played a teenage boy with, I don't know what the actual condition was, but he had
You're talking about
growth.
Mask, the movie
And
Mask, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
right,
Right.
there. And I always remembered, and this was long before, I was a kid,
Yeah.
where she walks into the principal's office, and the principal, of course, is saying, oh, he's special needs. I think Rocky should go to a school that is better suited to his needs. And she says, do you teach math here? Do you teach English here? Do you have gym here? And he goes, well, of course. She goes, well, those are his needs.
Yeah. I mean, it moves
So,
me now, even as you
yeah,
tell that story. I mean, I remember that movie from my childhood, and of course didn't know all of these other implications, but that speech is exactly what we're saying. You need to be able to get in the building. You need to be able to go up the stairs or whatever, get up to, right. Exactly.
yeah, those
So
are my needs.
so what we're saying is, like, that word is very clearly comes from the able-bodied mindset, not able-bodied.
But
We don't say able-bodied. What do we say?
non-disabled,
Right. But what
non-disabled.
I guess I actually wanted to say, because I wanted to disparage them for a
Yeah,
second, them,
yeah.
right? But even though I'm part of it, right.
Also, let me just be clear. Don't beat yourself up if this is all new to you and you're like, oh my God, my head is spinning. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I'm just say the wrong thing. Like, don't beat yourself up, because people say the wrong thing all the time. The only thing that we ask is, if you say the wrong thing, be willing and open for somebody to correct you, right? And if you're a disabled person and you correct I'm not saying that we don't have a right to be angry, because I'm angry all the time, right? And I often get, oh, she's such a bitch, right? But and then that's another conversation. But in terms of language, like if somebody says the wrong thing, either correct them, but correct them in a way that it's going to make a difference, so they don't walk away going, oh, those people, because I've heard that too. Those people. And then, so then they're going to go off with a bad taste in their mouth. And like, look, we all are allowed to have bad days. And that's another thing about people from marginalized communities, particularly disabled people. Like, we're all supposed to be happy and thankful that, the world lets us in. So like, I'm not allowed to wake up on the wrong side of the bed. Like when people say, oh man, she's so angry. I say, well, okay, did you just have a 45-minute fight with a cop because you had to get to work and now you're an hour late because you couldn't get on the bus? Did you just, miss an audition because, somebody ran over you in your scooter, and, what just happened to me, like my scooter knocked over in the middle of the street and I was on my way to an audition. Like, again, take a second to think like, oh, you don't know what that person is. Anybody, you don't know what that person's encountered. So don't lump everybody into one group of people just because someone's had a bad day.
Yeah. So broad strokes, even that we were talking about before, I think is so, like you said, or that we said, if And so just as we wrap up here, because I feel like we've cut, first of all, thank you for both the education and patience as I learn this. And I'm sure some listeners are learning this. I'm sure there's ones who know more about this than I do, but there are probably many that are listening, that learning this along with me. And both, I think, waking us up to something that we knew we wanted to be better at times and could be better at, and also knowing how we can really be an ally. And is there anything that you would wish for those of us out here who are listening to be better allies? And is there anything that you would give us as an edict or something to run with to take away today?
Yes. So look, one of the things that I pride myself on, and I have to credit my time at Inclusion in the Arts, is I feel like I'm an ally for other communities as well. Do I know as much about those communities as of my own community? Absolutely not. But I don't know as much about a bunch of disability communities either, because I don't belong to them, right? So I am always, whenever I speak, I always have every other community in mind. Always, 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 always. And so I would ask anybody on this call who comes from a marginalized community, one or more marginalized communities, please keep in mind when you're speaking about your own community that there are other communities who, because we're only as good as our whole, right? We can only really, really make change with each other. Like, and also the disability community, and we've talked about this yesterday too, Brian, is that because we are so, like you said, shifting plates, because we're so fragmented as a community, because there are different disabilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the galvanizing public face. And I'll say this with the exception of the deaf community. The deaf community, because a lot of deaf people don't consider themselves disabled, that deafness is its own culture. So they are a particular community that is very galvanized and speaks, I use that in quotes, with one collective voice a lot of the time, right? So other disability communities, we don't have that. So we really, really, really need people from other marginalized communities and also people from not marginalized communities. We need straight, white, cisgendered folks, non-disabled folks to be our allies for us, because we can't be everywhere at once, right? So if you're in a conversation about ED&I, equity, diversity, and inclusion, if you're in a room, look around. If you don't see a disabled person in the room, or if you think you might not, I mean, because a person could have an invisible disability, so you might not know. So it's always good to ask, is there, look, I don't see everybody adequately represented here. We should have representation from every group. If you're an actor and you're asked to audition for a role of someone who's disabled and you identify as non-disabled. Now, I'm not saying this gets sticky because it's everybody's everyone wants to work, right? I get it. But all I'm saying is, if you decide to take that audition, know that you're know what you're doing. Just have the knowledge and awareness that you are taking a potential opportunity away from someone else. I'm not judging and saying, well, I am
wrong. You're wrong. Yeah.
But if you choose to do it, at least do it with the knowledge that you're doing it, right? And if you choose not to do it, which is my hope, you say, look, I mean, there are examples of this. There, John Hawkes, who did the Sessions, where the Mark, he played Mark O'Brien, who lived in an iron lung. He did say, I don't think, there's another story about whether or not the team did its due diligence in trying to look for an actor, a disabled actor. I know they didn't, but John Hawkes said, I feel very uncomfortable about taking this role. And you must assure me that you have done your due diligence to find a disabled actor for this role, right?
And that's an opportunity that we can have. And if you can say, oh, I see that I got this audition, I actually want this to go to a disabled actor.
That's right. That's right. And people are doing it. People are doing it more and more. And look, like I said, I'm not trying to legislate anybody's morality. I'm just saying, be aware that you're taking an opportunity away from someone else.
Right.
That's all.
And if you're going to leave us with a sense of what you want to see next, I know you kind of earlier, you said like that the trans community has had this sudden feeling, seemingly sudden, let's just say that,
Yeah,
right? Because
not good. Yeah,
got very public and noticed.
yeah,
It is, if you were going to have the hope for what's next for disabled people in this arena, what would that be from you specifically?
Well, I want to see more disabled people appear everywhere in nondescript roles, everywhere in film, theater, television, especially in film, because it's so lagging. Although I have information about a couple of projects that were supposed to come up this summer, that were supposed to be released this summer, which will hopefully shatter a bunch of stuff, which is awesome.
Great.
Awesome, because they're
Right.
big blockbuster movies, right? But that's the first thing, is I want industry folks to understand that it's not just about getting us to play ourselves. It's about understanding that we are people, we are citizens of the world. We do other things. We don't have to be playing disabled person. Our characters don't, it doesn't have to have anything to do with disability. It's sort of, watch New Amsterdam and you'll see, like, the recurring folks on New Amsterdam, they're nurses, doctors. When the doctor is a little person, he happens to be a little person.
The story isn't
right?
about him being a little person.
The
Is
story
what I'm
is
hearing you
not
say.
about him.
Yes.
Little person. So that's number one. Number two is, damn it, we need disabled people. We need disabled creatives in every single room every time. So we need more disabled people in the writer's room. We need more disabled casting directors. We need more disabled producers. We need more disabled we need more disabled everything. It's the same exact thing that I said earlier, that 99% of our issues are other marginalized community issues. So we need Black people in every room. We need Black artists in every room. We need Latinx artists and Native American artists and trans artists and LGBTQ artists. We need artists of size. So yeah, so it's the same thing. I'm sorry. I'm like, you know what? I haven't eaten today, and I'm surprised.
No, I think what you're saying is you are saying what we need to hear. This is what we need to hear. And for us to, yeah. I love that you've given us a place to go in terms of our allyship, where we can actually find places to speak up. And I just want to thank you for, educating us, and I think that it shouldn't be your job to educate us, right? And so I really want to know you to hear that. I really want you to hear that.
Oh, I thank you. And I know that that the BIPOC community is experiencing this same thing. And I've been, I have done it as well, in terms of my BIPOC friends my BIPOC disabled friends having to educate me. And so that's something that I'm going through now too. So I get it. I don't mind. Here's what I'll say about education. I don't mind educating folks, because if I don't do it, somebody else might do it, or they might not do it. And so I don't mind doing it. What I do mind is that if I have to continue doing it to the same people, if I tell you something, like, absorb it and do it, or don't do it. Like I said with casting, if you choose to take that audition, do it with the knowledge that you have the knowledge that you're taking away an opportunity from someone else, right? If you're a casting director, why, if I tell you something and I help you with something, then assume that I'm going to say the same thing next time when you come to me. And I don't want to hear the same, if I tell you when I'm talking to you, you shouldn't use the word wheelchair bound. When you're auditioning with folks in wheelchairs, it's, just be careful with your language. And then you turn around and you call me a month from now and you start using wheelchair bound, that's not going to sit well with me. I'll answer you. I'll say the same thing I said to you last month, but I don't want to waste my breath. So
right, and yeah, so listen to this episode again, you guys, is what Christine said. Like, hear this twice if you need to let it sink in. And I want to say the accompanying download with this podcast has all this language on it, so that you can go a little deeper on this. And I've got a few questions there to ask yourself, to position yourself as an ally, and to help you deepen your understanding of this. So I just want to thank you, Christine, so much.
Oh my God, thank you.
Such a gift for us. Thank you for just giving us. And I look forward to, is there any way people should stay in touch with you? I want to make sure that yes, tell us.
You can, my website is, it's pretty long. So
Here we
it's
go.
Bruno Disability Inclusion.com. So it's all one word. So it's Bruno, my last name, Bruno, the
Mhm.
word inclusion. No, see? Bruno, Bruno Disability Inclusion.com. I tried to come up with something shorter and snappier, but I had to have inclusion and disability in it.
Let's do that. Let's do this piece again, Christine, because I'm going to include it
Yeah,
on the form as well. So I want you to just say it, don't spell it for them, because
yeah.
I'll actually have it on the form so you can say,
Okay.
and okay, right. So let me just take it back. So if people want to stay in touch with you, Christine, what's a great place to find you?
You can find me at BrunoDisabilityInclusion.com, all one word.
Terrific. And I will put that, that's a long website. So we will put that on that sheet for you guys so you can download that as well. And any last thoughts you want to leave with us before we take off here?
Um, just that I want to give a shout out to SAG-AFTRA, because I'm on the New York local board and I chair the New York Performers with Disabilities Committee. And they have been really great about trying to make space for their disabled members and for these issues and becoming better ambassadors, teaching members how to become better ambassadors for the community. And yeah, and we did a great webinar last month in honor of the 30th anniversary of the ADA. If you're a SAG-AFTRA member, you can go to the SAG-AFTRA YouTube channel and find it. If
Oh,
if
and
there's
I'll put that in the show notes as well. So if people
great,
want to click on that link, they can go to it. Great.
that's great.
And thank you so much again.